Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today I'm joined by the incredible Stella Foss, author, storyteller, and founder of the Creative Power of Older Women. Stella is on a mission to help women reclaim their voices, their sensuality, and their creative spark later in life. She's written books that challenge stereotypes, encourage bold expression, and remind us that aging can be a renaissance, not a retreat. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey Stella, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining me here today on 60 Plus Uncensored.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
All right, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I know who you are, but I think that maybe some people are not familiar with who is Stella Foss. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you're about.
Okay. So when I was a kid, I always promised myself I would publish my first novel by the time I was 25. So I was about 50 years late on that little promise to myself. I started writing books when I retired from my biotech career. And so far, I've published six with more on the way. My topics range from creativity for olders to sexuality to money and housing. I write about all kinds of things.
All right, so you've wanted to be a writer lo these many years, since you were 25.
Oh yeah, well before that.
Oh, well before that even.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I was gung ho on being a writer, but didn't happen. Well, it sort of happened. I in my biotech career, so I have a couple degrees. I have an undergrad degree in writing, and I have an MBA from Columbia, and I have a master's in cell and molecular biology. And so when I was in biotech, I wrote FDA submissions for new products. My longest one was my height stacked up. It was 32 volumes. It was 5'6". And so I was a writer, but nobody got to see that stuff. It was all in file drawers at FDA, all, confidential. So I wanted to write what I felt like writing. So that's what I've been doing the
Oh, right
last
on.
10 years.
Well, when you were a kid then growing up, I mean, like, were you like in like creative writing classes? Were you a journalist? I mean, what was your writing like, growing up? If you've had this, hankering lo these many years,
Yeah.
were you writing when you were a teenager, say?
Oh, yeah. I started writing when I was a little kid. My first poem, which was published in the little creative writing, mimeographed magazine from my elementary school, I wrote in third grade. It went like this: Myrtle the turtle went walking in her girdle.
Well, that's
That was
catchy.
it. That
That's
was the
catchy.
entire poem.
All right. Well, that's good. Yeah, my dad is a writer actually, and so
Ah,
he used to write spy novels and like mysteries and stuff like that.
oh,
And
cool.
yeah, then he wrote a book that's actually kind of famous, I guess. I believe it's been translated into seven languages. It's called How to Write a Damn Good Novel. Have you ever heard of that book?
No, I will look that up.
You can
That's
find it on
terrific.
Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon today. Then there's How to Write a Damn Good Novel 2, and there's like I think How to Write a Damn Good Screenplay, I think. But yeah, I
Oh,
don't think he writes too much anymore these days. But yeah, he's kind of famous for that book. And so yeah, he's fairly well known. And I myself have always like I wrote a book. I wrote a book called Get It Sold. It's all about how to sell your house, and it wasn't
oh,
ghostwritten. I actually,
fabulous.
well, I mean, like it's an okay book on how to sell your house, but it's a limited audience because nobody really ever cares about that, really. I mean, it's for sale on Amazon. It might have sold like a dozen copies or something like that.
Oh,
I don't really
wow.
know.
I just sold my big old house and downsized last spring, so I would have loved to have had it. We were on vacation. When we left on vacation, we told our realtor, we were joking. We said, "Try to sell the house while we're away." And we all laughed about it. So he did. We got an all cash offer.
Oh,
The
nice.
buyers wanted to be us out of there. They wanted to close in 2 weeks. Well, we were in Spain for another week. So that was interesting. Have you
Yeah.
ever tried to empty a 5 bedroom house? We negotiated for an extra week. We had 2 weeks. I mean, and we knew we had to get rid of half our stuff
Right.
because we were moving to a, 1 story level in house. So that was an adventure. So yes, I wish I'd had your book. That would have
Well,
been
sounds like
helpful.
your realtor did a great job for you, and that's the message in the book. Hire a realtor. But So,
Ah,
so
okay. All
it's
right.
funny because no, not really, but I mean, like, there's many interesting things in the book. But when I wrote it, my dad said like, "Oh, that's great. Maybe it'll be very successful." I'm like, "Well, I don't think it ever will, right? Like, it's not like a mainstream topic, and there's many books on that subject, right? It was mostly just for prospective, clients, right? To
Oh,
say, hey, like,
yeah.
I'm a subject matter expert, which I think I am. Um, but yeah, I've always enjoyed writing. Actually, I got like an A plus in English. It was like in my sophomore year in high school. It was like the only A plus I ever got was actually
Oh,
it was an A double plus. Actually, it was a I got
oh,
102% one quarter. Very proud of that fact. So yeah, I've always enjoyed reading and writing. What is it about writing that you enjoy so much?
oh, what a good question. It's just a drive I have. I, I, I can't really, how to quantify or explain that. I don't know. I've been in love with words since I was a tiny kid. I remember before I could talk or really understand, I must have been a baby. We were in a store. My mother had taken me, I'm sure I was in a stroller, and I was right next to two people having a conversation, the sales clerk and somebody who was a customer. And it just seemed like absolute magic to me that these people could communicate. Again, I wasn't there yet. I didn't know what they were saying, but it just seemed absolutely splendid to me. So, yeah, I've always loved language and I have always had this drive to write. So I was lucky actually that I had a career where I could do that every day. And now I'm done with having a career and I still do it every day. So, yeah.
You write every day?
Well, every day, not lately because I had surgery late September. So I took a bit of a rest, but I'm definitely getting back into it. But yes, every day that I can, I write.
Right. Before I was a realtor, I used to be a computer programmer, sort of, I guess you would say.
Oh,
And one thing I really liked about writing code was that you basically could construct your own reality, essentially, right? You could construct
yeah,
your own little universe and the rules which it operated under by, right? And like, like
yeah.
the inputs and the outputs. And to me, it was all just really fun to be able to like create a system, or a universe or whatever, that like just did what I wanted it to. And is
Yeah.
that what writing is like? Or do you find that when you write that like things change as you're going along with your story, right? Like maybe like, oh, I thought it was going to
Yeah.
end up this way, but then I get halfway through and like it just takes a complete different turn, or what's the process like? Like I've never written like like I've written some short stories a long time ago, a
Yeah.
million years ago, but what's it like writing like a book? Do you find that it changes paths sometimes on you, or
Well, I write both fiction and nonfiction. So, for example, my new book that just came out is an essay collection. So when I'm writing nonfiction, it's more like I'm observing and interpreting reality as it is out there. So that's a really different experience. And then, of course, I also write fiction. I write novels and short stories. And yes, that is creating a reality, but it's also riffing on the reality we have. So, for example, my first novel, which is called Brilliant, Charming Bastard, is about three women in their 60s. They're all scientists and they discover that they're all dating the same guy who's lying to all of them and stealing their ideas for an invention he's developing. And they get together and basically, form a startup to get their revenge on this guy. And that is actually, in part, a revenge novel because the bad guy in the novel is based on somebody I dated for a while. So, you know, there's a mix, isn't there? I mean, even when you're creating a world as a fictional world, you're basing it partly on stuff that you already know. And one of my favorite ideas about writing for people who are older, because I think creativity is something that we enjoy our whole lives, is called autofiction, where you mix and match. Do you remember when we were kids? There were those books, those flip books, where you could like they'd have different animals, and it was divided in thirds, and you could flip
Oh yeah.
different parts, and you could make something that had an alligator head and a, lamb midsection and a skunk's tail, that
Yeah.
kind of book.
Sure.
So that's kind of what autofiction is. You might take a character person you knew in your 30s and put them in a place where you lived in your 50s and give them a conflict that you experienced in your 40s. And the thing is, by our point in life, we have such a wealth of experiences. We've been places, we've known so many people, we've encountered so many challenges that we can really have fun with that kind of mix and match in fiction.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So now, can I ask how old you are?
Yeah,
You're six.
I'm
How
I'm 72.
you're 72. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have been writing all your life, and you just mentioned mixing and matching based on your experiences that you've had. You know, you're an experienced person at this point. You had sounds like a pretty high flying career. Sounds to
Mm.
me. How has that informed your writing? Right? Like, do you think that you're a better writer today or a more insightful writer today in your 70s than you were in your 20s?
This is a really good question. I, you know, I would love for life to be a controlled experiment, where you could say, okay, I made this decision. What would have happened if I'd made a different decision? What would have happened if instead of going, when I graduated from college, I got into the MBA program at Columbia and the MFA program at the City University of New York. I could have studied with Adrienne Rich, who's a wonderful poet. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I went to the MBA program. I went into finance, and then I switched to biotech, and I kind of never looked back. But what if I'd done that other thing? What if I'd gone to the MFA program and pursued a career as a writer from the beginning? I don't know. I really don't know. It would have been fun to write about all the different stages of life. And to some extent, I do, but I do tend to focus on the stage that I'm living now. So it would have been a very different writing career if I'd gone for it from the beginning. I don't know. The other thing about this that's interesting is if you think about publishing and writing and age, when when the traditional publishers really were the gatekeepers, when you really had to get a deal with a pretty big publishing house to publish a book, there was a lot of ageism, and older writers had a pretty tough time being published if you came to writing as an older person. And it's so different now because there are all these opportunities for self-publishing, setting up your own imprint, working with a hybrid publisher. You don't really need a traditional publisher, and you certainly don't need one of the New York top 5 publishers. And that's made a huge difference for people because ageism was very real in traditional publishing. At the same time, at the other end of the spectrum, when I was in the creative writing program in college, our professors were telling us that we didn't have anything interesting to say because we were too young. So they said, don't, do
Don't
something
bother.
else. Come back to writing come back when you really grow up, right? So yeah, I don't know what that would have been like. I suspect my professors were wrong and that I might have had something interesting to say if I'd become pursued creative writing as opposed to technical writing. But I'll never know.
You'll never know. Have you seen that TV show Younger?
No.
No, so it's about this woman who is 40 and she gets divorced and she has to go get a job and she's always had writing as her passion and she wants to get a job at a publishing house and she's finding there's a
Oh,
lot of age discrimination because she's 40 and
yeah.
so she pretends to be 26 and so she gets hired at this New York publishing company And
Yeah.
then it's all about the drama of her like lying about her age for
Yeah.
14 years and about her career path. And so if you're interested in like ageism in the publishing industry and you like, vapid, feel good TV, it's a fun show to watch. It's on Netflix, younger. So
Oh
just
yeah. Oh, I'll check that out.
if you ever binge watch anything, it's kind
Yeah.
of cute.
Yeah.
Um, but so that kind of surprises me though about the ageism in the publishing industry because who has time to read books, right? Who actually reads books? I would think it would be people who are 60 years and older, I would imagine, who has
Exactly.
most time. So do you think that ageism is still really a potent force in the publishing industry per se, or is it lessening now, or
It's lessening, and the reason is, and it's not just ageism that's lessening. It's also racism that's lessening. It's also sexism that's lessening, and the reason is that self-publishing has become massive. It's become such a successful entree to publishing your books. So, because there are so many diverse voices in, you look on Amazon, everybody's there. It doesn't matter, what your demographic is, you can get on Amazon and publish your book. So the publishing industry has had to respond to that by taking a serious look at different voices. So there are a lot of ways in which um, self-publishing has been beneficial. It's also, the other side of that, of course, is that the number of books being published has increased so dramatically that if you're an author, it's harder to find your audience. It's harder to connect with potential readers because they're hearing from so many different authors. But yes, I think the publishing industry has had to come to terms with the history of bias that they've had, and they've had to work to overcome that, which is great.
which is great. Yeah, my book is, of course, published on Amazon, and it's an amazing platform. It's very easy to get your
Mm-hmm.
book onto Amazon.com, and it's environmentally friendly too because it's print on demand, right? They don't print like 10,000 copies and keep them in a warehouse.
Exactly.
They print them
Yeah.
off one by one, or I mean, I guess there's an algorithm. If you're selling enough, they'll probably print 10 or 20 to crack, I would guess, but I also got an ISBN number for my book, right? That was
Yes.
easy to do because
Yes.
real books have ISBN numbers and barcodes, right? So are most of your books self-published, or do you have any that are published with like a major like HarperCollins or somebody like that?
My first book was published by North Atlantic Books in Berkeley, which is in between. It's a medium-sized independent traditional publisher. Um, and my partner and I went to all the meetings with them. They were terrific, by the way. I highly recommend them if anybody's looking for a traditional publisher. And when we came home, he said to me, we could do this. And instead of you getting 15% royalties, you'd get almost the whole proceeds. And I said, oh. So he's retired from a career in IT. He was a VP of marketing at an IT company, and he set up our own imprint. He figured out how to do it. When I write a book, he turns the manuscript into publishable form. He sets it up across the board. My books are all on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he's coached me on marketing, so I do my own marketing with his assistance. So we basically have our own little publishing house now. But yes, I started off with a traditional publisher, which I highly recommend. You just, even if you're thinking you're going to go indie, you learn so much from working with a good, competent publisher the first time around.
Well, also you get an editor with that publisher, right? I mean,
You
so
do.
how
Yeah.
how valuable was that having? Because if you're self-publishing, who's your editor? But so how is it working with like an actual like traditional publishing house and their editors? Is it hard to have somebody edit your stuff for you, or
It's a mixed bag, I would say, because I got terrific guidance from North Atlantic, and then for there are different stages of editing. There's the developmental part where you're really thinking seriously about what's missing from this book, what's extraneous and should go, what order should the material be presented in, all those kinds of questions. And that was all great. And then there's line editing, where someone, usually a different editor, because this is a different skill set, goes through line by line all the way through the book and suggests changes to clarify, to get rid of extra words, fix anything that's, then there's proofreading where they, make sure you aren't misplacing commas or dropping periods. Um, but that line editing stage was interesting because the person doing the line editing was a very different age than I am. And some of what I was saying, she didn't quite get. So she was suggesting changes that actually wouldn't work. Some of them were great, but some of them wouldn't work. So it's interesting. I think it's useful to have an editor who's kind of where you are, who's kind of aligned with your material. But yes, overall, it was a great experience having that editorial help, and that's something that I think we as indie writers can cultivate. When you're an indie writer, or really any writer, can develop a cohort, a group of fellow writers who have a lot of those skills. And then, we beta read each other's books. We give comments on each other's books. We can even proofread each other's books. And so it becomes a kind of community effort. And then, of course, you have a built-in cheering section when you do publish. You have folks who've read your book, who understand it, who can, get on Goodreads and talk about your book. So it's a different model. It's a very different model when you're indie publishing.
So, do you actually have like a formal editor for your independently published books, or no? It's just
No, no.
no, huh?
Keep in mind that I have 30 years in tech writing. So a lot of that time I was editing other people. So a lot of folks who are in the sciences are great at data, but not particularly good writers, and they're always generating reports of different kinds. So I spent a lot of time editing other people's material when I was in biotech, and so I probably have more skill at editing than a lot of indie writers do. So before my manuscript goes out to beta readers, I've already been through it, 10 times and made sure that it's as good as I can get it. And then I have a particular friend in North Carolina who is a retired English prof, and she's fabulous. And she, bless her, has been very happy to read through my manuscripts and give me feedback. So again, there's a whole networking component to this when you become an indie writer, which I did. Who knew? But it's
Well,
something we can do for each other. You know, there's a woman named Jane Friedman who writes a lot about publishing and indie publishing. She's fabulous, and she talks a lot about being a good literary citizen. And if you're an indie writer, that's really important. It's important to support each other, because we can be each other's resources.
so how do you guys find each other? I mean, like, are there Facebook groups or like Reddit groups, or how do these communities of writers form?
So, and I can speak to North Carolina, where I lived until very recently, and Oregon, where I live now. Each of those states has a statewide writers organization. And then in each case, there are subgroups for geographic areas within the state. So when I was in North Carolina, I was, for a while, I was in charge of one of those regional groups. And so I got to know, we had a steering committee, and I got to know the writers on that steering committee really well. And here in Oregon, I'm just getting to know folks. but there's a really vibrant writers community here. And writers tend to be pretty cool people and pretty helpful.
So these are people that you actually get together with in person, or
Hmm.
is it really? Wow, how
Yeah,
unusual these days, right? I mean,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
that's wonderful to actually have. So how, like, okay, you get together with a bunch of writers. Is it like five people, 50, 500? How big are these like meetings that you guys have?
Both North Carolina and uh, Oregon have statewide groups that get together once or twice a year. And there are hundreds of writers who come
Hundreds.
together. And then there are breakout groups that focus on different topics.
Genres. Yes.
Yeah, like for example, I went to one of my favorite ones was in North Carolina. There's a woman named Patrice Gopo who ran a workshop on structuring a an essay collection from blogs, which was perfect. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to do for my latest book. And she explained her methods. She's done this a couple times. She has a couple of essay collections out. She explained exactly how to do it. So I used her method when I generated my new book. So, yeah. And then in between those statewide conferences, the meetings can either, the local meetings for a couple of counties can either be on Zoom or in person. And here in Oregon, they sort of they alternate between the two.
Right. Okay. So if like, how would we Google the one for Oregon? What's it called?
Willamette Writers, it's called.
Willamette, right? Willamette's a county, right? So is that what you should do? You should just Google like if I'm in like,
Yeah.
whatever, what's the county name? I don't know, El Dorado County. I would just type in El Dorado
Oh,
County writers and
no, the actually the here I'm going to do it right now. The statewide organization is called Willamette Writers.
oh, really? Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
Willamette's the county where Portland is in, right? Or is that Multnomah? I don't know.
Uh, I don't know yet.
You
Unfortunately
just moved there.
I just moved here. But yeah, so I'm looking at the event calendar for Willamette Writers, and it has upcoming meetings for lots of different counties. So,
Okay, cool deal.
yeah,
All right. So, but
yeah,
like, if I'm in Massachusetts, I would just type in Massachusetts Writers Guild or
yeah,
community or whatever, and I'll
yeah,
find it. Not hard to
maybe. I
find.
mean, I really only know about these two states
Right. Right.
where I used to
Okay.
live and where I live now. But I wouldn't be surprised if every state has a sort of an umbrella writing
Right.
organization.
Okay. So just Google it basically. It's a
Yeah,
short answer, and you'll find a whole bunch of writers. And
yeah.
all right. So so the publishing houses, one of the things that they supposedly do is they do marketing, right? So like if you are if you
Supposedly is a good
so,
word.
so if you are self-published, then marketing
Yeah,
falls to you. So how
yeah.
like actually, newsflash, I'm going to write a new book, and it's going to be about reinventing aging in an era of radical change. Right? That's basically what
Are you?
the book's
Is
going.
that what
Yeah,
you're doing?
I'm going to do that. I
Oh, good
mean,
for
like it's on the
you.
list of things. I have a long list of things to do, but that's
Yeah.
on my list. So like, okay, how do I market a book like that? How do I get, I mean, like a million copies, like no one sells a million copies anymore, right? That gets extremely
Well,
rare,
I
right?
don't know. I'll tell you something. I have a friend who published her first book right when Amazon was starting to sell books. And it started doing pretty well. And Amazon was looking for writers that they could showcase because they were trying to build this new thing of publishing books online. And they chose her book. And she has sold 1 million copies of that book. And every subsequent book she's written, she's done quite well as well. So she caught a wave, and that wave now. So
Still
yeah,
going.
but I think it's Amazon's not helping writers anymore. And instead of there only being a few books on Amazon to choose from, of course, now there's so many. So I'm agreeing with you. I think at this point it is tough. Some people do it, but it is tough
You're
to sell
doing
a
it.
million
How do you
copies.
do it?
I'm
What's
not
the
selling a
secret?
million. So
No, but not a million. Okay, but you're doing pretty well writing
I
and
do fine.
self-publishing and marketing.
Yeah,
Tell us, like, I'm not expecting you to say, like, I'm not going to get on Oprah's book club because there is no more Oprah's book club, or maybe there is. I don't really know, but
it's tough to get attention
yeah,
from.
to get that, right? I
Yeah,
mean, so
that's
I'm not
hard.
expecting that. I'm
No.
I'm first working on getting 1 million subscribers to my YouTube channel, right? So like
Oh,
that's
that's
my
good.
well, you have to have a goal. I read this book, or listened to a book anyway, called 10x is easier than 2x, right? So like it's
Yeah,
actually supposedly easier to grow 10 times more than 2 times because if you're looking for 2 times growth, you're basically just doing the same thing, only twice as hard. And if you're going for
yeah,
10x growth, you're doing something completely different in order to achieve 10x growth. So like I have a
yeah.
growth mindset, an abundance mindset. I want 1 million viewers. I got 37 subs right now. So, but that's more than I had 2 months ago. It's like 35 more than I had like 2 months ago.
That's
So,
good.
yeah, working it slowly but surely. It's okay. Having great guests like you on the show is very
Well,
helpful.
thank you.
So, but tell us your secrets. Okay, come on, spill. How do we market
All
a
right.
self-published book? I need to know. And I think a
Okay.
lot of us aspiring writers want to know that too.
Okay. So I have a book out called Write and Sell a Well-Seasoned Romance. And that book, as you can tell from the title, is focused on romance. And it goes through all four stages. It talks about how to write one that fits the genre, how to edit it, how to publish it, whether you're going traditional or indie, what are the steps for each method. And then it talks about marketing and publicity. That's the fourth part of the book. Several people have said to me, you need to redo this book so that it's, you know, it's not just for people who are wanting to write romance, because the rest of the book after the first part applies to pretty much everyone. So, yeah, I get that, and I might actually do that. But in that book, there's a whole explanation for how to do a marketing plan, how to focus on your strengths when you're setting up your marketing plan, and how to execute that plan. And it's different for everybody. Everybody does have different strengths, but for me, one of the things I do is I have an account where I can set up posts in advance on across my platform on social media, which is basically LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So I set those up days in advance, and I do a lot of what we were talking about earlier, trying to be a good literary citizen, sharing information about other authors, but I also intersperse that with information about my own books. Here's a book that does this. Here's where to order it. Here's the cover. Here's somebody's brief review. So that's part of my marketing. I think it's an important part. Another thing is I have a Substack where I publish an essay, usually every Saturday. And at the bottom of each essay, it'll feature one of my books, and it has information on how to order it. I try to choose a book that has some connection with whatever the topic is of the essay. I am a guest on podcasts like today. And what else do I do? I don't know. I think those are kind of the main things that I've been doing. I was just reading an article that said at the end of each of your books, you should ask your reader who got to the end of the book to post a review on Goodreads and Amazon. And if it's an ebook, put in the links. And I think that's a great idea. I'm going to start doing that because these algorithms, these online algorithms, tend to feature books that have 50 or more reviews. And 50
Right.
is 50 is tough to get because everybody's busy. People will write to you and say, "Hey, I just read your book and I really enjoyed it." And you write back and you say, "Hey, that's terrific. Would you please review the book?" And then crickets, right? They're
Right.
busy. They don't have, and it really doesn't take long actually to write a sentence or two. Um, but it's hard to get folks, frankly, it's hard to encourage folks to do that. So those are some of the things I do. Another thing that a lot of folks do is they write articles that are related to the topic of their book and have them published different places. And that's something that for a nonfiction book like yours, can be really helpful, because if you write an article that's engaging, and then at the bottom of the article it has your brief bio and it has a link to where to buy your book, that's a great publicity technique. So there are lots of options out there. And again, what people do to sell books depends on their strengths. You can also pay for marketing. You can pay for marketing on Amazon. You can pay for marketing on Facebook. You can target your demographic, that your target audience. So that's another thing that can be useful. And then, of course, some people hire a publicist, which I have not done, but that's certainly another option. The challenge is that publishing houses, if you do go traditional, publishing houses now are not as profitable as they were. They're not doing as well because, of course, they have this enormous competition from folks self-publishing. The spending on marketing by traditional publishers is not what it was. So, yes, you kind of, whether you go traditional or indie, you are in the driver's seat when it comes to marketing. And it's a good thing to make it fun, because it's really part of being a writer at this point.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's okay, really. I mean, like, because my dad, when he was writing books, he always wanted to like write like a New York Times bestseller or whatever, right? You know, he was
Yeah.
always like raging about what's that guy, The Hunt for Red October, who wrote that book, and many other Tom Clancy, right? You know, he's going like
Oh, right.
Tom
Yeah.
Clancy, like he sucks up all the money for like like
Yeah.
spy thrillers, right? The publishing houses they won't pay for any other thing unless you get a big name and you're going to be like
Yeah.
making movies and stuff like that. They're not going to spend any money on you anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. The advances are tiny, right? You know, so it's like, well, at that time there was no option to self-publish, right? Really, I mean, like you
Right.
could have,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, good luck selling it, right? You know, but
Yeah.
at least now there is a chance. And I think there's probably another way to like, like ancillary income streams, right? From like speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. I mean, I don't really know, but I think that
Yeah.
there's probably a lot more ways to monetize your writing career today than there were 40 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Although, of course, it's hard, right? Like I have a client, and he is a poet, right? It's like, my God,
Oh,
it's like sign up for deep poverty by
that's
become
tough.
by becoming a poet. Well, he's lucky because he got a job at a college, right? So like he
Yeah.
teaches poetry, and so he actually has a pension and all that, right? So God bless. I mean, he's so lucky, right? Because
That is
otherwise,
lucky.
I mean, he still writes poetry, right? I mean, I don't know anything about poetry, but I've read a couple of poems of his poems. I mean, they seem great, but what do I know about it? So yeah, so at least there is that as a writer today, you do have some viable ways to, eke out a living at the very least. So what kind of stuff do you like to write, right? Like, okay, it's like it's a sunny Sunday morning and you have your cup of coffee and you're all alone with a cat. Do you have a cat? I don't know.
No, I'm allergic to cats. That's interesting
Okay.
you would ask, though, because I'm one of the things I'm writing is a series of vampire novels, and the vampires in my novels are benign. They're older women who are basically immortal, and they've taken vows not to harm innocent humans. So, one of them runs a blood bank and, distributes ethically sourced blood to Midwestern vampires. Um, but anyway, I was just yesterday writing about a vampire who decides, actually, a cat sort of adopts her. She was allergic to cats in her lifetime, which I am, by the way. And so she didn't realize that one of the benefits of being a vampire is that you're no longer allergic to anything. So this cat follows her home and starts bringing her dead rats, and she of course, something that's dead she can't feed on. But then the cat happens to bring home an injured rat, and she says, "Okay, great, I can feed on this." So then the cat figures it out and starts bringing her injured rodents. So they have this very nice sort of friendship. So yeah,
Well,
Anyway,
cats are the best. I have a cat, Sparky the
do
cat,
you?
great cat. Well, yeah, I grew up with cats,
Oh,
and I've had a few cats over the years. I'm a big fan of cats. So you like to write vampires? What else? What else do you write? I mean, I understand you write erotica too. Is that correct?
that's
Or
right. That's what I,
right?
yeah, that's what I started off doing. So my first book, the one I mentioned that was published with North Atlantic Books, is called Aphrodite's Pen: The Power of Writing Erotica After Midlife. And that book came about because it actually started, a friend of mine started a reading series at a bookstore in Oakland that's unfortunately folded at the pandemic. But anyway, this was pre-pandemic. And she invited her friends who are over 60 to write erotica and come and read it before a live audience. And the reading series was called Dirty Old Women. And and this is right when I was thinking about retiring and that I was going to transition into writing. And I thought, what an interesting challenge. I had never thought about writing anything like that before. So I did it. I started writing stories, and there were a group of us who would get up and read once a month. And this reading series was very well attended. And it was a real mix of ages, which I thought was interesting. Sometimes younger women, like women in their 30s, would come up to us after we read and say, thank you so much, because the message we've been getting from the culture is that part of life ends for women at 40, which I think is unfortunately a very real thing, a real problem, that our culture does give women that message. So after we'd been doing this reading series for a while, I thought it would be great if we started a writing group. And so I started this writing group called Erotica, and invited all these women, and then some of us invited our other friends who hadn't been reading at Dirty Old Women. So anyway, we started this group, and we'd get together once a month, and somebody would bring prompts, somebody would bring snacks. We'd do this at someone's house, and we'd just sit and we'd have a great time. We'd write to a prompt and then read each other what we'd written. And of course, everybody's writing was so different, which is one of the great things about prompt writing when you're in a group. So when we'd been doing that for a while, I thought, we should get the word out about this kind of writing and how fun it is for people, women of a certain age, as they call it. I went to a friend of mine had a writing retreat up in Marin County that she held once a year. So I went to this retreat, and we were all just sitting around talking, and I mentioned to this woman sitting next to me, I'm thinking about writing a book about how to write erotica for older women. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I work at North Atlantic Books, and we'd love to publish a book like that." So that was it. No query letters, no outlines to potential publishers, all that stuff people go through to get a book traditionally published. I didn't do any of it. They were as good as her word. That was it. I published with those folks, and was very happy.
Well, that just shows you the power of networking, right? It's really important to get out
It really
there.
does. It really is about, that whole story is about networking, actually, the whole thing.
Right. So, have you written a lot of erotica? I mean, how many erotica books have you written, or short stories, or
So the Aphrodite's Pen has a bunch of examples of erotic writing, and some of them are mine in that book. And then my second book came out. So that book came out in 2019, and then of course we all know what happened in 2020. And a friend of mine called me up. She was this is I had by then I had moved to North Carolina, and my friend called me, and she said she was living in a senior community, and she said, they've locked us down because of, obviously, the pandemic, and we are not allowed to leave unless we're going to a doctor appointment. And if we come back and we don't have a slip from a doctor, we can't get back in.
wow.
And she she said that the thing that made her angry about this was not the restriction. It was not being afraid for her health. None of that. The thing that made her mad was, and this is a woman in her 80s, she said to me, "This is going to wreak havoc with my dating life." And I thought, okay, there's a challenge. How am I'm going to write stories about how to get around this one, you know? So I wrote this whole book of during the pandemic. I spent the pandemic writing linked stories about this senior community where the women in the community all have these really intense romantic and erotic encounters with ghosts, time travelers, people from parallel universes where there is no pandemic. There's a vampire actually in that book, a very, very thoughtful and friendly vampire in that book. So that was my second book, The Erotic Pandemic Ball, which has now been reissued as the Erotic Pandemic Collection because I added some stories about women in other places. There's, New York City and Bay Area stories in there now too. But the bulk of it is about these women in this senior community in North Carolina. So
Right.
that
So
was it. And then I switched to writing, more women's lit and romance kinds of things and nonfiction.
right. So what's the difference between romance and erotica?
Oh, great question. So erotica is really about exploring the erotic aspects of a person's life, how they kind of discover themselves through exploring the sexual aspect of their nature. So that's erotica. Romance is this whole other thing. Romance is very structured, and people say it's formulaic, and I say, well, do you call a sonnet formulaic? No. So why call romance formulaic? So there's the initial meeting, which people call the meet cute, that happens at the beginning, and then there are a bunch, between these two characters who are going to be involved in a romance. Then there are all these iterations of, you know, um, there's a barrier to the relationship, and they manage to get through it. And then there's another barrier, and they manage to get through it. So that goes on the whole middle of the book, and then the end of the book is the happily ever after, or at least the happy for now ending. If you don't have those elements, you don't have a romance. If it's structured in some other way, where it's really more about personal development as opposed to the barriers to the romance and overcoming them and having a happy ending, then it's not a romance. And if you say it's a romance, people get really ticked because romance readers want to read that. They want to read that over and over again in different, settings and different characters, but that plot. So yeah, it's very different. Romance and erotica are very different things.
Well, which sells better? Erotica or romance? Because romance, I understand, is like a
Romance,
bread and butter of like American publishing, right? Or maybe world
yeah,
publishing. I don't know.
yeah, romance, romance basically saved the American publishing industry at one point. The whole industry was in trouble, and they didn't really like publishing romance. But you got to go where the money is, and romance is now. I was just reading; it's $1 billion a year
Right.
business. So,
And so you how many romance novels have you written?
well, I really, frankly, only wrote one.
Just that one.
Yeah, my first vampire book, and then I kind of broke out. Then I decided that structure was too structured for what I wanted to do. I mean, to me, this part of life is all about why follow any rules. So
Right.
I just write what I feel like, and I'm realizing that the plots that I'm drawn to do not fit that structure. But nevertheless, I had the chutzpah to write a book about how to write a romance, having written exactly one, which is Vampires of a Certain Age, is my first vampire novel. And so writing Sallow Well Seasoned Romance is entirely based on that process of writing, editing, publishing, and marketing that book. So
Right. So,
that's my confession. I don't think I've confessed that to anybody
all
before.
right. That's okay. That's all right.
All
So,
right.
how many books have you written all together then?
I've written six, written and published six. I'm working on simultaneously on seven and eight. And so my plan is to next year. So I just have the one vampire novel out, but my plan is to have at least a trilogy out in 2026,
All right.
in time for Halloween. This is going to be a Halloween marketing push.
Right. Well, how much time do you spend writing then? I mean, like, are you writing like, because Jerry Seinfeld says you gotta like lock yourself in a room and like write for an hour a day no matter what. I mean, I don't know what he says, but something like that, right? I mean, like, do you have like a process that's kind of like that, or are you just like write whenever you feel like it?
Well, there's a third way, and that is there used to be this organization called National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo for short. And if you wanted to be involved with NaNoWriMo, what you did was you pledged that you would write 50,000 words during the month of November. And that suited me very well because basically I'm a binge writer. I mean, some people really swear by, writing from 9 to 12 every morning, no matter what. Um, I'm kind of not that way. I'm not that structured. Again, I don't really believe in at this point in life and following rules. So, but that rule I did. I for years I wrote 50,000 words in November. Unfortunately, the organization is disbanded, but there are all kinds of folks setting up sort of informal versions of that. So November still is a big writing month. So, yeah.
So when you're not binge writing, what do you do to
Yeah.
keep yourself occupied?
Well, I I now am living near a grandson.
Oh, cool.
I moved across the country to live near. Originally, we moved to North Carolina because we had three grandchildren there. But 4 months after we got there, my son said, "We're moving to Brooklyn. Would you like to move to Brooklyn?" And we said no. So we stayed there for years. So now we've moved here, and my daughter, who lives here in Oregon, has promised they are not moving to Brooklyn.
Where in Oregon is your grandchild?
Salem, we're in Salem.
Salem. I've never been to Salem. You know, I lived in Portland for 9 months, actually.
Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I sure did. I sure
Oh,
did. What year was that? That was 1993 to 1994. I lived there, and it was too cold for me.
is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a
Oh,
California kid, right? You know, like I
yeah.
enjoy, sunny weather and warm temperatures, generally speaking. And I went there for the winter. Like I was not. I mean, I knew it was going to rain, but I didn't know it was going to rain and be in the 30s when it was raining, right? It was cold.
Oh,
And I was like, you know what? It's okay. I don't need this. So, anyway, but a beautiful place, Oregon, absolutely beautiful place. I imagine Salem is quite nice.
oh,
So,
it's very nice. And it's
yeah,
the state capital.
and it's the state capital. Yeah, never been there
Yeah,
before. Yeah, never ever. But maybe I'll drop by. Who knows? One of these days.
you
So,
never know.
Stella, we're kind of running out of time here. We got to wrap things up. But before we do, let
Okay.
me ask you this: Is there anything that you especially would like to share with our viewers and listeners?
What haven't we talked about? I think one of the most important things about getting older is that we have the opportunity to reclaim play. And I just want to say that, we play when we're kids, and then we get all serious for most of our adult lives. And we have careers and kids and a mortgage and all kinds of obligations. And then if you're lucky enough to be able to, your kids grow up, of course. And if you're lucky enough to be able to walk away from full time employment, this can be a real renaissance and an opportunity to play at whatever attracts you. Um, on Facebook, a lot of the time, I see, I'm in all these groups with older women, and a lot of them are complaining about retirement. And it just makes me really sad that they're missing out on this opportunity to reclaim what it is that they love about life and explore that. And I just would encourage any of your listeners who are approaching retirement or have retired to find their bliss and find what it is that they love to do. That's why I wrote my book about writing a well-seasoned romance, because I know that there are folks out there who wanted to write a book and didn't, and put that aside the way I did. And even if they didn't want to do that when they were kids, you can have a blast writing a book as an older person. It can be just incredibly fun. And even if that's not what you want to do, if what you want to do is paint or learn about physics or collect toy dinosaurs, whatever it is that you want to do that you didn't get to do when you were so busy, go enjoy yourself. So, yeah, that's what I would say to folks.
Go enjoy yourself. Well, that's very good advice. So, Stella, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. And if people wanted to reach out to you to talk about writing or playing and having fun in your later years, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
There are a couple ways. One is you can, if you're on Substack, you can send me a message. My Substack page is Creative Crones with Stella Foss. I'm also on LinkedIn. If you get on LinkedIn, look for Stella Foss. I'm the only Stella Foss on there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can also send me an email, stella@stellafoss.com. And, of course, my website where my blogs post is www.stellafoss.com. And if any of your listeners are women over 50 who would like to submit a guest blog, I am happy to publish those. I publish a guest blog by a woman, usually a woman who has a new book out, but other folks as well. Write to me with your blog ideas, and we can take it from there.
All right, very good. So the first one, Substack, I didn't quite understand what the Substack was. It was what?
It's
Tell me
it's Creative Crones.
What's a crone?
What's a crone?
Yeah, I'm not a writer. I don't know. A crone? What's a crone? I've heard the word.
A crone. A crone is, it's a woman who has earned a crown.
A woman who has earned a crown. Okay.
That's right.
That's in Webster's. I can go look at Webster's and see.
Webster's will tell you something different. Webster's will tell you that the original meaning of the word crone had to do with being old and wizened and all those stereotypical things that people say about older women. But the word has been reclaimed recently and redefined to mean a woman who wears a crown, and the crown is passing 50, passing 60, and being a badass, basically.
Right on. So the Substack is Creative. What? Say it again. The Substack.
Creative Crones with Stella Foss.
Creative Crones, and crone is C-R-O-N-E.
C-R-O-N-E-S. Yeah.
Crones. Creative Crones with Stella Foss. All right. Terrific. Well, Stella, this has been really fun. I've really enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much. Do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
All right. Well, I will catch you on the flip side.
All right.
That's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Stella Foss for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor. Do Stella a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and then share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you do know anyone over 60 who's still out there doing big things like Stella, living boldly, working with purpose, or just aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation on Reddit at 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.